Welcome to AP CSP Unit 5, Lesson 8, Boolean Expressions and If Statements. The bubble number 2 in this lesson is a video, and I do recommend that you watch it. It is about Boolean expressions, but we're going to jump right into bubble number 3. And Boolean expression is basically an expression that can evaluate to a true or false. So, and these are the different symbols that we'll be using in our programming to evaluate Boolean expressions. So if you see the double equal sign, then that actually means is equal to in our programming. Remember, a single equal sign means you're getting a value to a variable, and it's different than we're used to in math. So you're going to see a double equal to represent equals. To represent not equal to, you're going to see an exclamation point with an equal sign. And then, of course, these symbols you're used to from math will be the same. So greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, a less than or equal to. So in this first bubble that we're actually going to work on, it's bubble number 4. We have different Boolean expressions, and we're going to have to make them all equal to true. So when we run it, we'll see down in the console log that they all are false. Okay? So basically, we're going to take the information and we're going to make them all equal to true. So just some pre-information, age is got the value of 16. First name value is Marcus, and var Boolean value is false. Okay? So it says console log age is greater than or equal to 18. Well, obviously, if he's 16, it's not greater than or equal to 18. So we're going to go ahead and make this true. So if we just change the symbol to less than or equal to 18, then that first one will evaluate to true now. If we scroll up, we'll see that it is now true. And that's what you got to do in all of these, okay? For this next one, it says age is less than 16, but it's not. So I'm going to just add the equal sign here. So now it says age is less than or equal to 16. And then when I run it, that second one should be true now. Yep. The next one, it says console log first name is equal to Marcus. Well, they're not the same because this is a lowercase, so we're going to have to make that uppercase. And that one should now be true. On this one, it says console log Julio is greater than first name. And I am not sure why this one is less than, but in the answer key, I saw that if you change that one to less than, then it does become true. No clue. Maybe, I have no idea why on that one. So let's keep moving. Console log true is not equal to true. Well, obviously that isn't true. They are the same. So if we make that a double equals, then that one should be true now. Go ahead and scroll up. Yep. And then this last one, it says console log Boolean is equal to true. And that's not true, it's false. So I'm going to go ahead and put an exclamation point to say Boolean is not equal to true. And now all of these top ones should now be true. Awesome, I did the top half. Now the bottom half, it says warning below this line, examples get weird. Console log, the point is you shouldn't do this, but you could. It might even happen by accident. You should know what happens. So it says console log 3 is not equal to 3. And it says false, but I would think it's true because this is a number and this is a string, but apparently it is not. So that's weird. Let me go ahead and put equal to and see what happens. So let me scroll up and see the answer, and it is true. Interesting. To me, these are different things because this is a number and this is a string, like, a string of text, like a character. So, but interesting, that's probably why they said that one gets kind of weird. Then it says console log 5 is greater than 10, and of course that's false. And let's see, if we do less than, let's see if that becomes true. Okay, let's scroll up one. And it does. Interesting. So again, just like the one before it, you would assume that these would not mesh together because that's a string and that's a number, but for some reason it does evaluate. And then the next one, console log age is less than first name. I don't even know what to do with this one. So why don't we do age is not equal to first name, because that should make that one true. And let's see, let's scroll up. And it sure does. So that one makes sense to me though, because they're not the same word. Excuse me, they're not the same variable, you know, and stuff. Next one. Hello is equal to false. Hmm. Okay. Well, yeah, of course not. I guess if I make it not equal to, let's see what happens. Okay, that one is true now. And then the next one says is Boolean is equal to age. Well, Boolean is false and age is 16, so obviously they're not equal. So I guess again we can make it not equal to. Okay. And I think the issues is these are different things. Like this is a word, this is numbers, and these are things that shouldn't be actually like evaluating to true at all. So it is, I agree that it's very weird. And then it says first name is equal to name. And again, if we were to go ahead and put not equal to, it probably will evaluate to true, which is true. They're not equal, but it's just these are random, like number values and like string values shouldn't ever like, they aren't the same thing. So very interesting, kind of different on the bottom there, but on the top, it is important that you can read the expressions and know whether they're true or false and why. Okay, so let's move on to our next bubble. So on bubble 5, there is another video. It is part 2 of the conditionals video. You watched part 1 in bubble 2. And this one is specifically about if statements. And so, I went over to bubble number 6 just to kind of show a coding example with an if statement. And basically, we're going to be starting to incorporate if statements into our program. And that's going to obviously make our programs more robust. It's going to give choices to our, computer, to our, for it to make decisions. And in this case, it says console log voter verification. Var age is a prompt num. How old are you? And if their age is greater than or equal to 18, then the console log will say you can vote. And then it'll say don't forget to register. If it's not, then it'll just say thanks for verifying. And so basically, that's how an if statement works. If it's true, whatever's inside it will happen. If it's not true, then it won't happen. So we're going to actually go ahead and practice this. We're going to do bubble number 7. And in bubble 7, we're going to add an if statement to the code to check the age to see if the person is old enough to drive. It's really similar to the one we just looked at. And we're going to display a message if the person is old enough to drive. So let's practice an if statement here. So we're going to go ahead and grab an if statement. We're going to put it right here in line 3. And the console log that says it looks like you're old enough to drive will go inside the if statement. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I'm going to paste it in here. And so that's what's going to happen if the statement is true. And then we're going to say if age is greater than or equal to 16. So if they're 16 or more, then they should get the response, it looks like you're old enough to drive. Okay, so we're going to run this and it will prompt the user to put in an age. So I'm going to go ahead and put like 5, and this one should jump right to the thanks for verifying since it's false. Yep, driver verification, thanks for verifying. And then the second time I run it, which you should always check both situations, I'm going to put in an age bigger than 16 and hopefully it will respond correctly. Yep, driver verification, it looks like you're old enough to drive. Thanks for verifying. So that's a way that you can use an if statement in a program. Let's go ahead and let's check out bubble number 8. Bubble 8. Use prompt num to ask the user to enter the secret number. Add an if statement to check if the number is the secret, and you can make up your own secret number. Use console log to display a message if the user guessed correctly. Okay, so we're going to do a couple things here. First, we're going to put in a prompt num right here. So we're going to go to variables, and we get to name our variable. So I'm going to put var secret, and then prompt num. What I want to ask is, what is the secret number? Okay, and then I'm going to add an if statement underneath that. So I'll go back to control, throw in an if statement, and it'll say if secret is equal to, make sure you do the double equals, and I'm going to put 18. So that's my secret number. And if secret is equal to 18, then the console log will say Congratulations, you guessed the secret number. Okay, and remember how if statements work. If they guess the secret number, then they'll see that message, and if they don't, they won't. Now I do have red here, so I have a mistake. Expect an operator instead stop exclamation point. Oh, I forgot to put quotation marks around my string of text, so that's why it's confused. There we go. Problem solved. And I think that's all we needed to do here. So let's go ahead and run it. And then I'm going to guess the right number, 18. And I'm going to click OK. And since I guessed the right number, it gave me the message. And then I'm going to check it to make sure it works if someone guesses the wrong number. So I'm going to guess 9. And I'm going to click OK. And again, it does work because it doesn't say the congratulations. So awesome. That is another example of using an if statement. Bubble number 9. In bubble 9, we're going to add an if statement to the event handler to check the password and display the unlock only if the password is correct. So now we're getting into like something that seems, more realistic here because, there's an actual password and you can see where this could be used because if we're trying to log in, it'll unlock or it will lock. Okay, and before we get started, one of the key ideas in this lesson is that you can use the double equals to compare strings as well as numbers. So you can compare words like in a past word or a past phrase. Okay, so we're going to use an if statement in an event handler to compare text that user inputs into a UI element. So note the setup and design mode. There are two images. There's a red lock and a green lock. The green unlock is hidden at the start. Okay, they're just going to see the red. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add an if statement to the event handler to check the password and display the unlock only if the password is correct. So what we have to do is we have to add an if statement here. They already have the on event for the login button. So when they click the login button, then what's going to happen is we're going to have an if, which will be under control. And we'll go ahead and throw in what's going to happen inside there. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to get the text from the password input. So we're going to grab a get text. We'll drag that over. And we're getting text from the password input. And when we get the text from the password input, if it's equal to the secret password, which is going to be duck, then what's going to happen is it's going to show the unlock image and it's going to hide the lock image. So it'll show the green one and it'll hide the red one. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this. So we're going to go ahead and run it and then we'll enter a passphrase. I'm going to put in cat. And when I push login, nothing happens because obviously I didn't put in the right phrase. Now I'm going to go ahead and reset it. And if I try duck, hopefully this works. When I click login, then it does work. So if they're the same, then that will happen. Okay, awesome. Let's go ahead and hit finish. Now, as you move on to bubble number 10, there is yet another video, and this is part 2B of the conditionals. So there's 3 videos in this one, and this one takes it further. So not just an if statement, but an if-else statement. So, and the difference being, of course, if you have an if statement, then it's either true, it'll happen. If it's false, it won't happen. But with an if-else statement, then now we can have a condition if it's true and a condition or a condition if it's false. Okay, so for example, like the one we used earlier, if their age is greater than or equal to 18, it would say this. Or if it's not, then it would say that. And earlier we didn't have this here. So that's the difference. It's going to give you a condition for true or false rather than just true. Okay, so we're actually going to jump over to bubble number 12. And all these resources that I'm kind of skipping through, just make sure you go through and read, watch the videos and read through the content. So what we're going to do is we're going to recreate the simple movie age example from the video, which hopefully you watched. And we're going to add an if-else statement that checks to see if the age of the person is greater than or equal to 13. And we're going to use the console log to display appropriate messages. So we already have our prompt, which is what is your age? So then we're going to grab an if-else statement. Okay, and then inside our if-else, we're going to say if the age is greater than or equal to 13, then they can watch the movie. And if they're not greater than 18, then they can't watch the movie alone. So then what we're going to do, and they provided us with some pseudocode, which is like not actual code, but it's like a description of what the code's going to be. So we can take that and that will help us with our message. So we're going to go ahead and put a console log statement here. And we're going to put one in both the if and the else. Okay, but for the if, we're going to say you can see a PG-13 movie alone. And on the else, if it's false, if they're younger, then we're going to say you are not old enough to see a PG-13 movie alone. Okay, and hopefully this works. So we're going to go ahead and run it. And we'll go ahead and put 15. So this one should give us the you can see a PG-13 movie alone. And it sure does. And then we'll do a younger person and we'll go ahead and do 7. And we'll click OK. And it says you're not old enough. So fantastic. So now we have an if else. So we have a condition for true and one for false. Okay, on bubble number 13, add an if else Add an else to the if statement and add a console log message inside the else clause that says something like, sorry, you can't drive yet. So on this one, it's already started. We already have our if for our driver verification. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the else. So we're going to go ahead and add an else portion to that. And inside the else in our console log, we're going to go ahead and put a message. So if they're greater than or equal to 16, then it's going to say it looks like you're old enough to drive. Else, so if they're not, then it's going to say, sorry, you can't drive yet. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and run it, and we'll go ahead and put 18, and then we'll hit OK. And it says, looks like you're old enough to drive, which is accurate. And then we're going to go ahead and put 11 and click OK. And it says, sorry, you can't drive yet. So that one's working great too. Let's hit finish. And let's move on to bubble number 14. So on bubble 14, we're going to add an if-else statement to the login button event handler. That shows the unlock and displays access granted if the user enters the password correctly. Otherwise, shows the lock and displays access denied. So let's head over to code.org to bubble 14. And what we're going to do is we're going to come into our on event for the login button, and we're going to add an if-else statement here. So they already have all the code that we need. We just need to put it in the right place. So we'll drag that here, and so we're going to grab a get text, and inside there for the ID, we're going to put the password input because we want to get the text from the password input. And if it is equal to whatever our password is, so let's say our password is cat, then basically if they type in cat, then we want to set the text to access granted, and we want to show the element, which is the green lock image. And then else, if they don't put in the right password, then we want to set the text to be access denied, and we want the element to be the red lock image. Okay, and that should do it. We shouldn't have to modify anything else in the code. So let's go ahead and run it. And we'll go ahead and type in a passphrase. I'm going to type in dog. And when I hit login, it says access denied, which is correct because that's not the right password. I'm going to run it again. This time I'm going to put in the right password, which is cat. And when I log in, it works. It's got the green unlock and the access granted. Awesome. So let's move on to bubble number 15. So in bubble number 15, they talk to us about how to add a drop-down menu. And basically there's multiple steps for that. You're going to drag the drop-down menu over from the design toolbox, and then you're going to give it an ID, of course, like always, a meaningful descriptive ID. And then the new thing, I guess, is that you're going to have these different options. So, in for the drop-down menu for them to choose from. And just like before, in order to get what the user chose, we can grab some code, an on event for the dropdown, that when it gets changed, then whatever happens, whatever we want to do with that information. In this case, they had a console log statement that said selected option, and it got the text from the dropdown and put the selected option there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead to bubble number 16. So we're going to go ahead to bubble number 16 to see what our first task is going to be. So we're going to add an event handler for the drop-down menu that triggers on change. We're going to add an if statement to check if the age chosen in the drop-down is greater than or equal to 13 and set the text in the result label. So there's quite a few steps on this one. So let's head over to bubble 16 in code.org. So they've already provided all the starting UI elements, including the drop-down, but none of the code. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an event handler for the drop-down menu that triggers on change. And we can do that over in design mode. So we can click over here on our drop-down, and we can go over to events. And then when we scroll down here, it says on change. So we're going to click insert and show code. And so it gives us our on event button, age drop-down when it's changed. Okay. And we want to add an if statement inside there. So let's go to control. Do you want an if or an if else? So what we're going to do next is we're going to add an if statement to check if the age chosen in the dropdown is greater than or equal to 13. So we're going to go to control, and we're going to grab an if else statement. And what we're going to be checking is if the number is greater than or equal to 13. Now, since we're trying to compare number, instead of get text, we're going to use something called get number, which is like get text, but in this case, we're going to say a number from the age dropdown, okay? And then we want to say that if it's greater than or equal to 13, then we want to set the text of the result label to you are old enough to see a PG-13 movie alone. Okay, else, like if they're younger, then we're going to set text into the result label to say, oops, forgot my quotation mark there. You are not old enough to see a PG-13 movie alone. Okay, and I just realized I have a typo here. It's not set test, it's set text. And I have a little spelling error on enough. And I think we should be good. So let's go ahead and run it. And let's say that the person is 7 and it says, you're not old enough. Awesome, that's working. Let's say we run it again and we say that they are 14 and it says you are old enough. So it does look like our code is working. So let's hit finish and let's head to lesson 8, bubble 17. In this bubble, we're going to add an if-else statement in the roll button event handler to check if the random number that represents a dice roll matches the user's guess in the dropdown. So what's going to happen is the user will make a guess, and when they click roll die, then it'll put the value here, and if they roll the same thing, you'll see that they get that trophy. If they roll a different number, then they'll get the sad face. So the UI elements are already created for us, but we have to make them function properly on this one by adding the if statement. So let's head to code.org and let's kind of look at the code a little bit before we get started. Um, if we look here, we have a var score equals 0. Okay, so that's going to keep our score as they're playing the guessing game. And they did include a function here, and we haven't had any functions lately. Of course, we lost the functions in Unit 3. So the function is called reset, and what it does is it hides the frowny image and the trophy image. That way these aren't showing up. And it'll reset the dice roll label and make it empty. So that way each time you click, it'll be ready to have a new amount and a new picture based on the roll. Okay, and so that's interesting because we haven't had those functions lately. But anyways, and they use that function a couple times in our program. Now what we need to do is we need to add an if-else statement inside the event handler. Okay, so on event, when someone clicks the roll button, we want it to reset, of course, and we want the die value to be a random number between 1 and 6, of course, because there's 6 sides. And we want to set the text in the dice roll label, the die value, so whatever number, 1 through 6. So what we have to do is add an if statement. We're going to put that right here, and I'm going to use blocks for that just to make my life easier. And actually, we're going to need an if-else statement because we want to know if they guessed the right number or they didn't guess the right number. Okay, and if they did guess the right number, then we're going to go ahead and show the trophy image, and we're going to have the score go up by 6. So we can just move those in here right now. And else, then we want to show the frowny image, and we want to have their score go down by 1. That's what their game is. Okay, and I'm just indenting these real quick. And otherwise, we're going to leave the rest of the code that they have there. Now, of course, we haven't finished because we need to put the actual Boolean expression up here, but we have all the code in the right places. Okay, so I'm going to move over to show blocks just for a second to make my life a little easier on this piece here. It's not going to let me, so let me go ahead and grab the get number because that's what we're looking for. We want to get the number, now I'll go to show blocks because this just makes my life easier. Right here, I can use the drop down. We want to get the number from the guess drop down. Okay, the number that your player is guessing. Okay, and I just wanted to go to blocks just so I could use the drop down arrow to get that. And if it is equal to the die value, which is our variable for when they roll the dice, if those are equal, then we want it to show the trophy and add up the score. If they're not equal, if they're not the same number, then we want the frowny and the score to go down. So let's go ahead and run this and see if it's working. So I'm going to guess it's a 3. I'm going to roll the dice. It was a 6, so I got my sad face. That's good. Let's make a new guess. Awesome. And it looks like everything reset. I'm going to roll the dice. And I still got it wrong. Let's keep rolling the dice. Woo! And we know it does work because then when it was a 1, I got the trophy. And you can see I wasn't paying attention, but my score is changing over here. So if I roll the dice and it's not the right number, then it's going down by 1. Okay, and then once I get the right number, hopefully, eventually, it went up by 6. So everything's working great. We are done with bubble number 17. So let's move on to the last bubble. In bubble number 18, what they want us to do is to make an app that tells you whether to stay home or go to school based on what day of the week it is. So basically, if it's Monday through Friday, then it's going to say, you need to go to school. And if it's the weekend, then it's like, you can stay home. Okay? So let's head to code.org and let's see what they've done for us. So we have to add the drop-down menu in design mode. It looks like they didn't do that for us this time. So let's go over to design mode and let's grab a drop-down menu and we'll throw that right here in the middle underneath the select the day of the week. And I'm just going to leave it as drop down because we only have one. And then for our options, we're going to put the days of the week. So we'll have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We'll do all the days of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Okay. So I'm going to go and just check and make sure my drop down looks good. Yep, Monday through Sunday. Awesome. Okay. And then now it says we need to add an event handler for the drop down. So I'm going to click on our drop down. Let me reset it. I'm going to click on our drop down and we're on our drop down. So we're going to add an event handler for the drop down. So I'm going to come over to events. I'm going to click insert and show code, and that added the event handler. Okay. And then last, we need to write our if statement. Okay. So the if statement checks which day was selected and if it was a weekend or a weekday. Okay, so this was going to be a little tricky. Don't need the console log statement, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Go into show blocks because this one's a little complicated and I want to, make sure we do this one and not have any issues. And so basically what we want is so if they select Saturday, so I'm going to go ahead and do a get text in here, and I want to say if they get text from the drop down, okay, and then I'm going to go back to show text for a second just because in this case it's easier for me here. So if the drop down is equal to the word Saturday, spell it with a capital letter, then we want it to say a certain thing, and so we're going to set the text. And again, I'm going to go back to show blocks. Sometimes it's just easier here. Set the text of the message label, of the message label to say it's the weekend, stay home. Okay, so we'll do that. It's the weekend, stay home. Okay, so now the thing is we have to do Sunday as well, and we have to do the other days of the week. Okay, so in this case, we're going to do what's called an if-else if. So basically, we're going to push the plus sign right here, and that's going to give us a third option here. And so that's where it gets a little tricky, is they technically haven't taught us about this. So anyway, so then we're going to do kind of the same thing again. So we're going to say else if we get the text from the drop down, excuse me, let me go back to show text here just because this part's easier in show text, and it's equal to Sunday, we're going to want the same thing. We want it to say set text, it's the weekend, stay home. Okay. Now, otherwise, like if it's any other day of the week, then we want it to say the other message. So we don't have to go in and put else if Monday, else if Tuesday, else if when, because those are all the same. So if it's Saturday or Sunday, we want it to give it that message. Otherwise, we want it to say the other message. So that means on the last else, we can do, it'll represent all the other days of the week. But we don't want it to say it's the weekend, stay home. We want it to say it's a weekday, go to school. So this is what's called an if-else if. And actually in lesson 9, we'll be doing a lot more with that. So let's run it and let's see if everything's working properly though. So we'll hit run and I'm going to say it's a Tuesday and it says it's a weekday. Awesome. Monday, it's a weekday. Good. Wednesday, it's a weekday. Let me jump to a weekend. Saturday, it's the weekend. Good, good, good. Thursday, perfection. Sunday, it's the weekend. Friday. Okay, and notice I checked every single day of the week. You always should because you want to make sure that your code is working entirely. So that is the answer for Bubble 18. And yes, that was a tricky one, but we're going to get a lot more practice with that in Lesson 9. So thank you for watching Unit 5, Lesson 8.